relationships can really feel like a battlefield sometimes, can't they? Like whether it's your spouse, your kids, or even your boss, just navigating those tricky interactions without losing your cool can just be exhausting. But what if I told you that there's a way to handle any relationship, no matter how challenging, while keeping your peace and showing up as your best self? All right, today I'm going to share with you three powerful shifts that will help you stay in control of yourself in any situation or relationship. And by the end of this video, you'll not only feel more empowered, but also you'll have practical tools that you can handle the ups and downs of relationships with confidence. But before we even dive into the shift, there's one thing that we really got to talk about. One fundamental truth that we really have to embrace. And that truth is that you can't control anyone except yourself. You might have influence in your relationships, right? You have influence with your kids, your spouse, your friends, your coworkers, maybe, but control, not so much. All right. That's out of your hands. You can't control their thoughts. You can't control their emotions. You can't control their reactions. You do not have control over them. And once you actually accept this as truth, everything else that I'm going to share with you today will actually start to click into place and you'll be able to use it positively and powerfully. Okay, so the first shift is everyone is doing the best they can with what they have and what they know. So, what do I mean by that? All right, first, I want you to think about your own life. Have you ever made a decision where you looking back was like, what was I thinking? What was I doing? Did I do that? So, we all know hindsight, right, is always 2020 because we have the benefit of seeing the results of the action that we took, whether we like it or not. But in that moment, in that space and time, you made the decision, right? You actually did the best that you thought that you could, okay? Based on the information that you had, based on the emotions that you were in, that was the best that you can come up with in that moment. And maybe you were overwhelmed with fear and anxiety, or maybe you just needed a quick release of some kind of pain, internal or external, right? That may all sound familiar, and you're justified in that. You feel justified in that. But now, I want you to take that same understanding, all right, and apply it to others. Even when someone else's actions, right, doesn't quite meet your standards, it's often the best that they can do at that moment. This doesn't mean that you have to love their choices. It doesn't mean that you even have to agree with them. But it does mean that recognizing their humanity and letting go of unnecessary judgment, right? So when you adopt this mindset, it's freeing. Okay, you can actually stop taking things so personally and start responding with empathy instead of anger or frustration. So this brings us right into our second shift, right? And that is everyone sees the world differently based on their own perspective and their level of awareness. So here's the thing. We often assume that everybody thinks just like we do. We believe that everybody sees the same world that we see. But that's a mistake. Even though we say things like, don't they know? Or didn't they believe that? Didn't they see that? But most of the time they didn't. They didn't feel how you felt. They didn't think about the topic, or they didn't think about the issue exactly the way that you did. Okay. Our perspective is shaped by our past experiences, and awareness comes in so many different forms. There's situational awareness. There's self-awareness. There's the awareness of others and what's going on with them. For example, like I once worked with a guy who was brilliant in our field. Okay. It was my boss at the time and just an extremely smart guy and great to learn from. Besides this little thing, his situational awareness was great, but his self awareness and his awareness of others, not so much, right? So he often came across very condescending. But it's not because he meant to, but because he just couldn't see how his words impacted people. And another example is that there was a time I was handling an irate customer who was yelling and he was threatening me because a certain situation happened. And one of my team members asked me afterwards, he's like, how did you stay so calm? And honestly, my response was simple. His anger had nothing to do with me. It truly didn't. It was directed at me, but it had nothing to do with me. He was scared about the possible outcome, and his fear showed up as aggression. Okay, when you understand that everyone operates from their own level of awareness, it's much easier to see their actions for what they are. They're not personal attacks, but they're just a reflection of what's going on in the inner state, right? This allows you to stay calm and respond, not react, but actually respond thoughtfully. So that takes us right into our final and third shift. Okay, and that shift is let go of being right and focus on outcomes. Okay, because being right is really just subjective. And here's why. Okay, two people can firmly believe that they're right. But what actually really matters is whether you're achieving the desired outcome. Right? Let me give you an example. Imagine two kids, both of them going down the wrong path, making some bad decisions in life. And one kid's parents overwhelm him with love and grace. And because of that, he turns his life around. Right? The other kid's parents scare him straight, but he also changes. And they both go down a path that's healthier, that's more loving, that's pleasant, and they're both thankful for what their parents did. Both approaches worked, but which one was right? Both of them are right in that particular situation. But when we focus on our outcome rather than our ego, right? You'll find that it's easier to communicate. You'll find that it's easier to connect. It's easier to resolve conflicts. This is especially powerful when you're in close relationships. Like, for instance, I want my wife to feel loved and supported and heard. So when we argue, and I take a second to pause and ask myself, am I acting in alignment with my intentions for this relationship? Is my focus on being right or helping her to feel loved? So that shift in my focus changes everything. Okay, it allows me to respond instead of react, and it creates space for a healthier communication. Now, that doesn't mean I just roll over and give in. It doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean that I pay attention to the energy behind my words and my actions. And that is why the energy in the whole dynamic actually changes. All right, so let's recap the three shifts. One, everyone is doing the best that they can with what they know and what they have. All right, number two, everyone has a different perspective and awareness level. Number three, let go of being right and focus on outcomes. When you apply these shifts, right, you'll notice something amazing. People's behavior become less about you and more about where they are on their journey in life. Right? This understanding just frees you to observe and respond thoughtfully instead of just getting triggered and reacting emotionally to all the things going on around you. Now, let me be clear, right? Practicing these shifts doesn't mean that you just let people walk all over you. It does not mean that at all. Setting boundaries is still essential, even in our close relationships. People are where they are mentally and emotionally, and you can't change that. But you can decide that you're going to be willing to live in these relationships in a harmonious way. And by doing that, you use these shifts and you're able to stay in control of the one person that you can control, and that's you. But if you feel like you're still maybe getting, just easily triggered by things, definitely check out my other video, The Biggest Obstacle for Men Finding Peace, for more tools that will strengthen your emotional mastery. But until next time, definitely remember, be the change that you want to see in your life. Be your own revolution. This is Naftali Anderson, and I will see you next time.